When a person is drunk,
Yes, definitely.
Does the amount of alcohol matter?
Sure. If a person is drunk, he sleeps. He has no control over himself. He loses awareness. So he's already vulnerable. Basically, alcohol lowers vibrations instantly, then it is easier to work. It is easier to attach an entity, and it is easier to take possession of a person's mind.
Does it mean that it's more difficult to influence a person if he keeps his thoughts in purity?
Yes, absolutely. When faced with various religions, it is very difficult to influence Muslims. They are in a constant connection with the egregore. They do namaz every day and read prayers on a daily basis. They are constantly under some kind of a dome, so it is very difficult to influence them. When you start impacting a person, he begins to address in a prayer. Indeed, many of them are very different from those who come to church only when everything is bad in their life. They come to pray, and then for 5 years they forget about God, some canons, and so on. Muslims, as a rule, passionately believe and passionately give energy to their egregore, and this egregore protects them very well. That's why it is very difficult to work to make any kind of influence on a true Muslim believer.
Is this some kind of a good egregore?
Well, for them, yes. This egregore is good for adepts who contribute good energy to it.
How do you sense it? For instance, you have found an energy trace of such person. What's next? Do you try to drag him somehow to visualize this threat and you fail? Or how do you do that?
It disappears. I cannot get a grip on it. I focus on it, but something immediately knocks me out of the flow, just like that. Or I visualize a person in front of me clearly and can affect him even at a mental level, but some image is not created in my mind at all. I even look at a photo, reproduce an image, but it vanishes from my mind. Thus, I can clearly see that a person is covered with something.
Does this only work with Muslims?
It does for me. Nowadays, there are very few people among Christians who truly believe. Even those who write in their comments that God is in the soul, that they are all faithful believers, but in reality they are not. Even most often they write that all this is a sin, but then ask in a private message how to make a rubbing spell. Such cases also happen.
A rubbing spell?
A rubbing spell.
What is it?
It means pulling off luck or some benefits, beauty, money, success. In other words, pulling off something good from another person. There is shifting when we dump some crap on someone else, and there is pulling when we take something good from another person.
Zhanna, could you please tell us if there are people to whom you cannot connect or influence them by various magic methods in any way?
There are such people. If there is ritual protection on a person, it's not even possible to connect through cards. If someone has put ritual protection over him, or if an entity is in a person's service, it is also difficult to do that. It happens that a person has a strong ancestral protection. He has a powerful, prosperous, rich kin from generation to generation, and even looking at the cards, you cannot read information from him. He is covered as impenetrable. It happens.
You touched upon an interesting point that when a person experiences strong emotion, he opens up to the invisible world. But what if a person diligently works on himself, controls himself, and doesn't even allow any of the low qualities to manifest? Does it mean that he belongs to a category of people to whom it's impossible to do anything by means of magic rituals?
Nothing is impossible. There are difficulties. There are points that you've mentioned where it would be difficult to work with such a person. It would take a lot of manipulation to break his will. This is energy consuming, and not every practitioner will be breaking through that door for so long. Someone will just say, hell with it, he doesn't give in. There are such cases.
Is it possible that he will never give in? Did you have such cases in your practice?
I had once. There was a man who didn't give in at all. He felt a strong impact, but didn't give in.
Were you personally acquainted with him, or did you get his photo, roughly speaking?
No, how to say, it was an order, but I met this person once. That man was an athlete, very hard-tempered, and he had self-control, a really tough one. Athletes and military men may have such a temper. His willpower was at such a level that it was very difficult to work with him, even through evil spirits. In the end, I refused.
Self-control at the level of emotions, right?
Yes, discipline, self-control, the man controlled and distinguished his thoughts from alien ones. Hazes had no effect on him, he was fully aware. Such people are very difficult to work with. There are such people indeed.
What do you mean by the word awareness?
When a person understands that something is wrong with him, that he goes against his principles, let's say he will never cheat on his wife, he has the principle that if there is one, then it's forever. I attach an entity that pushes him. You should cheat. You should sleep with that female client. And his principles definitely take over. That's what awareness is about. A person doesn't succumb to any provocations that are imposed on him and intended to break his will.
But if someone is already attached to him, can these principles not be of his own?
That's exactly where awareness comes in. You realize, how come these principles not be mine my whole life?
You mean, who am I, right?
Right. I lived my whole life with this. Where do these thoughts come from? When a person begins to turn on such a protective element, he immediately weakens the effect of an entity or a haze.
A protective element is a search for oneself, isn't it?
Yes, it means to be on. You know, it's like hypnosis. When they begin to put us into hypnosis, but we catch this moment and start reciting a poem in our mind, for example, we thus immediately interrupt the state of induced hypnosis. The same is true when working with magic. When a person begins to realize that something is wrong with him, delve into himself, try to control his emotions and follow his principles. It is very difficult to work with him.